Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivadikacharya Ashto Tadasadashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivadikacharya Ashto Tadasadashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaiṣṇava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Sagaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai, Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Sankirtan Jagna Ki Jai, Brihat Madanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, the Transcendental Lordship, Shri Panchatattva, Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Shri Prahlad Nrsimha Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 9, chapters entitled The Passing Away of Bhishmadev. Today we're covering text 14. Sarvam kāla-kṛtaṁ manye bhavatāṁ ca yad-apriyam sapālo yad-vaśe loko vāyor ghanāvaliḥ sarvam kāla-kṛtaṁ manye bhavatāṁ ca yad-apriyam sapālo yad-vaśe loko vāyor ghanāvaliḥ. Please chant. Mataji? Oh. Okay. Sarvam all this. Kāla-kṛtaṁ, done by inevitable time. Manye, I think. Bhavatāṁ cha, for you also. Yat, whatever. Apriyam, detestable. Sa-pālaḥ, with the rulers. Yad-vaśe, under the control of that time. Loka, everyone in every planet. Vāyor, the wind carries. Eva, as. Ghana-āvaliḥ, a line of clouds. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone and every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Please repeat. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Purport. There is control by time all over the space within the universe, as there is control by time all over the planets. As the big gigantic planets, all the big gigantic planets, including the sun, are being controlled by the force of air, as the clouds are carried by the force of air. Similarly, the inevitable kāla, or time, controls even the action of the air and other elements. Everything, therefore, is controlled by the supreme kāla, a forceful representative of the Lord within the material world. Thus, Yudhiṣṭhira should not be sorry for the inconceivable action of time. Everyone has to bear the actions and reactions of time as long as one is within the conditions of the material world. Yudhiṣṭhira should not think that he had committed sins in his previous birth and is suffering the consequence. Even the most pious has to suffer the condition of material nature. But a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide brāhmanas and Vaiṣṇava, following the religious principles. These three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Even the great controller of the universe, Brahmājī, is also under the control of that time. Therefore, one should not grudge being thus controlled by time, despite being a true follower of religious principles. Sarvam kāla-kṛtaṁ manye, bhavatāṁ cha yad-apriyam. Sapālo yad-vaśe loko, vāyor iva ghana-āvaliḥ. In my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Om Gnanatam-anandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umlitam Gena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. This is a particularly relevant section of the Bhagavatam for me. After I'd been a devotee for 4 years, I came to Mayapur for the first time. This is in 1981. I accompanied Satsvarup Maharaj as his servant. He was attending the GBC meetings. And during the time here, I had my first maha big test. Very heavy. I'm not going to go into details because there's no time and it's a little confidential. Anyway, it was just like I was so disturbed. Real heavy. And then anyway, I persevered. We went on to Vrindavan, got back to the United States, consulted with the regional secretary, and then he arranged for me to actually have a meeting with Satsvarupa Maharaj. And guess what? He read to me from this section of the Bhagavatam, kind of as to Shanti Shanti Janmastami, you're gonna survive this. It's okay. So most of you have been in the movement for a while that are hearing the class online. I can't see you. There aren't so many people here in person. But most of us go through tests. My experience over the last 44 years is that it's an upward spiral of intensity. And so what to do? Okay, so anyway, this is what this section's all about. How to stay stable, not fall into despondency, how to continue with full utsaha, enthusiasm in our devotional service, in spite of the tribulations that come our way, arranged by kāla. We'll get into a little more details on it. First, I want to kind of give a perspective of where we are in the Bhagavatam. As we know, in the last chapter, we went through Queen Kunti's prayer, very touching. Incidentally, one of her prayers, oops, I didn't include it in my shloka list. This is being translated into Russian, and I usually give it in a PDF file. This one's not there, though. Okay, this is Queen Kunti. Vipada shantuta shashvat, tatra jagadguru, bhavato darshanam yacha, apana bhavadarsanam. May all those Krishna. It's towards the end. Vipada, you just look up Vipada. And she's saying, may all those calamities happen again and again. For then when they happen, Krishna, then you come to us. And when we see you, we no longer see repeated births and deaths. You found it? Yeah, okay. It's actually a loving exchange. This is described, let's see. Hold on one second. I was going to cover that a little bit later on in the class. Let's see. Yeah, in the 19th purport of this chapter, Prabhupada describes the tribulations a devotee undergoes as another exchange of transcendental bhav with the Lord. Interesting way to view it, right? We'll go into more details. Hopefully, when you walk out of here and you get your next big maha test, you'll be able to apply the principles. Okay, so then, and then Prabhupada goes on to say, there's a transcendental bhav between the Lord and the devotees. The Lord says, I put my devotee into difficulty, and thus the devotee becomes more purified in exchanging transcendental bhav with me, transcendental love. Whew. Now, generally in the material world, let's take the example of Ekachakra Prabhu. Let's pretend that Ekachakra is 10 years old, okay? And he's got a really good toy that he loves, okay? And then some mean old guy comes and takes the toy away from him. What is Ekachakra Prabhu going to do? He's going to cry like anything. I want my toy back. Okay, so then the mean man, heart softens and gives him the toy back. And then Ekachakra starts smiling again. He's happy. Oh, I get to play with my toy. Okay, but then the mean old guy comes and takes the toy away from him, and Ekachakra starts crying again. Okay, so this is obviously an analogy, But in the material world, material consciousness means we make an endeavor and we judge that endeavor by the result. If we get what we're after, then we're happy. If we don't get what we're after, then no. We fall into into a depressed modality, right? Does that ring any bells with anybody? Yeah? Okay. So, it's a different thing in dealing with the reverses in Krishna consciousness, okay? So we're going to get into that. And Ekar Chakra is not 10 years old anymore. He's a mature devotee, so he knows. I think he knows all about this. Okay, so first of all, okay, so we had the prayers of Queen Kunti, and then Yudhiṣṭhira. Krishna's about ready to leave for Dwarka, and Yudhiṣṭhira, oh God, Krishna, help me. He's so disturbed. There was this battle of Kurukshetra. Does anybody here know how many people were killed in the battle of Kurukshetra? Huh? Okay, I'm going to say it in, 64 crores or 640 million people. I mean, we think, the COVID pandemic is bad, but whew, talk about, just imagine, the number, the blood that's just all over the battlefield and disembodied limbs here and there, and, incredible. People decapitulated. So this was fought, this is what Yudhiṣṭhira was singing. Now remember, we go back to Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, he didn't want to fight because he had the concern, all my relatives, this was like his worldly attachment. So now here we got Yudhiṣṭhira on the other end, after it's all happened, he's looking back, oh my God, what kind of hellish existence I'm going to have for being responsible because I got put in the position of being the king. This was what the battle was all about, to get it, to bring it back to the Pandavas, the rule. So he was just completely besides himself. So this sets the stage, okay? Everyone's, I think, aware of that. You've been attending the classes, and if this is your first class, this kind of gives a very brief overview of what's going on. So then, even Krishna, this is before, in the last chapter, was trying to convince him. Shanti, Shanti, Yudhiṣṭhira, it's not that big, come on. He couldn't do it. All these other sages, including Vyasadeva, the incarnation, Krishna, incarnation of God, Idam Bhagavatam Nama. So, there's a plan behind all this, okay? So we're going to find that out. So even Krishna himself, he's the supreme personality of Godhead. He couldn't pull him out of it. He was able to pull Arjuna out of his melancholy mood and disturbed state and get him focused, but he couldn't do that. So then the big question would be, why did Krishna arrange for him to go and take shelter of Bhishmadev? Okay, this is a big question. It's going to be answered later on in the chapter. If we have time, we'll cover that towards the end of the class, okay? But it's interesting, all of the reasons that this arrangement was made by Kala. Kala is actually another way of saying Krishna, or fate, or destiny. All these different words could fit into that. And this comes a little clearer later on in the chapter. Okay, so I think I'll sneak in one good reason. That Krishna wanted to show the superiority of his devotee. He even could convince Yudhiṣṭhira, and Krishna himself couldn't. Bhishma Dev could do that. So the glorification, worship of, and he brought, all these people came for his departure. It actually reminds me of my Sankirtan partner for 19 years. He left his body in Mayapur in 2007 in the first Mayapur Institute classroom. And it kind of a little similar to the passing of Bhishma Dev, because all these sages and saintly persons were there, and it was just unbelievable. And he was so appreciative of the opportunity. This is my good friend. He said to me 3 days before he left, Janmastami, I thought this was going to be really tough, but you and Sankalpa, that's my wife, made it easy. And we arranged for, he had this huge tumor in his chest that enveloped his spinal column, his aorta, that's the main artery to the heart, and also his esophagus. So he couldn't, he just got so skinny at the end because he couldn't swallow anything. His thigh was the size of my wrist. He got down to like 45 pounds. That's about what, 20 kg. He was a small man anyway. And then we arranged for 24/7. We had, I think it was 34 devotees massaging his legs and feet vigorously, 24/7. Because if that stopped, he was in excruciating pain. Because when the tumor ate into his spinal cord, became paralyzed from the waist down, with that paralysis came excruciating pain. Anyway, I won't go into all the details of it, but it's just, this section is just so deep in my heart. So forgive me if I diverge a little bit. But okay, so Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam param tajmat paratanam devi tadiyanam samacharam. This is Padma Purana, and Madhya 11:31. You got it. Okay, this is when I sent you. So, my dear Devi, although the Vedas recommend worship of the demigods, worship of Lord Vishnu is topmost. But even superior to the worship of Lord Vishnu is the worship, rendering a service to the devotees of Lord Vishnu. Okay, so this is what's going on, and we'll get into the reasons, hopefully, if we have time. Boy, that clock's ticking now. Summary of... okay, I'm just going to give a quick summary of of Bhishma Dev's explanation to Yudhiṣṭhira of why all this happened. But first he says, like in this verse, it's due to kāla, inevitable time. And then kāla is identical with the Lord himself. This comes next couple verses. And therefore the influence of kāla indicates the inconceivable plan of the Lord. So it all took place due to the inconceivable plan of the Lord. There's an interesting analogy that Prabhupada would sometimes use, and some of you probably have heard it, that the mother instructs the daughter-in-law by instructing the daughter. Okay? So, because of Arjuna's exalted stature, he didn't need to go through, he didn't need to be covered by yoga maya and become all bewildered. Kripanya dosho pahata subhava prichami tvam dharma samudha cheta. Let's see, that's Gita 2.9, is it? I think. Kripanya dosho pahata subhava prichami tvam dharma samudha cheta. I'm confused about my duty. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So, but this was to instruct us. That's why the whole Gita was spoken on the basis of this bewilderment that Arjuna had. But he got straightened out at the end, and then he just surrendered. Same thing's happening here. Okay? So for the mother-in-law, or for the mother to instruct the daughter-in-law, sometimes it's a little intense. Might be some ego clashes or whatever. But if just demonstrate this is the way you're supposed to do it, and chastises the daughter, daughter probably may even be aware of why the mother is doing it, and then the daughter-in-law accepts and moves ahead, and then the marriage goes on without big ripples. Okay, so basically what we're undergoing, we're getting enlightened by this. Okay, so what should we do? And I didn't know what to do when I had my first Maha test. I learned after that by the instructions of Guru and Sadhu. But what do we do? Okay, so Prabhupada, he gives in the Purport, he says, but a pious man is faithful to the Lord, for he is guided by the bona fide Brahman and Vaiṣṇava following the religious principles. These three guiding principles should be the aim of life. One should not be disturbed by the tricks of eternal time. Okay, so let's clarify what these guiding principles are. If we back up to the 12th verse, it's, Prabhupada very succinctly lays it out. As long as a person is fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord. Guiding principle 1. Okay? Guided by the bona fide Brahmanas and Vaiṣṇavas. Guiding principle 2. Strictly following religious principles. Guiding principle 3. One has no cause for despondency, however trying the circumstances of life. Okay, so hopefully everyone will walk away from this class if I'm doing the service properly. And if someone hits you over the head with a sledgehammer when you leave the temple room, you're going to just see this, okay, Krishna's divine arrangement for my upliftment. That's American humor. No one laughed because no one else is here from America. So what to do? Okay. So how to implement these principles in our... Okay, Ekachakra's laughing after the fact. Okay, we'll give you a piece of burfi for that. I actually promised you a piece of burfi before and I never gave it to you, right? Maybe that means hellish planet for me. I don't know. I hope not. Okay, American humor. What to do? Okay, so how do we implement these in our lives? Okay, I'll use my own life as an example. In 1990, in January of 1989, I attended for the first time the VIHE, Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education seminars. And Giriraj Swami was giving what was called the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It was basically, he covered Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Rupa Goswami in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and many of those were extracted from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Krishnadas Kaviraj. Okay. So I had been a devotee at that time, 12 years. I was regularly reading Prabhupada's books. But somehow or other, there was one big, very, very super important philosophical understanding that I didn't have. up to that point. So that was a very transformational experience to understand what pure devotional service actually is, and what it means to be a pure devotee. Usually it's a lofty understanding that's, well, maybe sometime in the end of my life I'll get there. That's oftentimes what is common amongst members of our movement. Not me. I'm not a pure devotee. No. Okay, so this verse, which is kind of the foundational verse, some of our ISKCON scholars have called it the Paribhasa Sutra, but of the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, but Bhanuswami, Gopi Prandan, one time he was given a class in Vrindavan, and I brought this up. I used the term Paribhasa Sutra regarding the verse I'm about ready to quote. He said, no. That's not the Paribhasa Sutra of the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu. The Acharyas never say this. And Bhanuswami says that's also the case. I won't mention any names, then I don't commit any offense, but there are a couple well-published ISKCON scholars that say that. But Bhanuswami, his explanation is that it's kind of what all of the definitions, and there are many definitions, like sadhana bhakti, vaidhi sadhana bhakti, raganuga bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti, it all expands from this verse that we're about ready to quote. But it's not the Paribhasa Sutra, but everything kind of flows from it, which is kind of what a Paribhasa Sutra does. Okay, anya-bilashita sunyam ghana-karmadhyanavitam anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhaktirutama. When first-class devotional service develops, one must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge obtained by monastic philosophy, and fruit of action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. There are many details on this. I've given a 3-hour seminar just on this one verse, so I'm limited in what I can say about this. But if somehow or other we can make this a guide for us, then we know that we're pleasing Krishna. How to do that? Well, I've written down a couple thoughts that of course, we have the external representative of Supersoul who can guide us, and direct us into the pure devotional platform. The whole movement was established by Srila Prabhupada as a facility for practicing Uttama Bhakti, which is basically this definition. That's what it is, Uttama Bhakti. Do you need the verse number? Do you need the verse number? Oh, you got it? Okay. Huh? You don't have it? Yeah, it's in there. It's Madhya 19.167. I gave it to you. Yeah. It's coming from Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11, but in our books, that's where it's published. It's throughout Prabhupada's books. He quotes it very frequently. Okay, so Guru helps us tremendously. That's the the beginning of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. That's how we enter the door. That's the doorway. Guru Padashraya, taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnana jnaninas tattvadarshana. So we approach the spiritual master, we inquire submissively, we render service, and he imparts transcendental knowledge. He gives us an understanding of how to proceed with our devotional service. Okay, so one thing that, Prabhupada says in the purport to the famous Smartavya, I don't have this down here, sorry, and I don't know the verse number. Smartavya sadatam vishnor vishmartavyo najatuchit sarve vidhi nisheda shur etayor eva kinkara. So of all the rules and regulations, so one should always remember Krishna and one should never forget him. And all the rules and regulations are simply servants of these two principles. Okay, so then in the purport, Prabhupada makes a very powerful point. He says, of all the instructions of the spiritual master, the chanting of 16 rounds is the most essential. It's the number one high priority service that each one of us has. Many times we're thinking, well, my practical service is what's most important, and I can think about that, I can make plans during japa, and Krishna will reveal the way ahead, and no. That's not the way it works. Like pramada, or inattention, is the root cause of all the other offenses. So we can't do that. We have to be attentive. So we're crying to Krishna, please engage me in your service. And by that, he means, the meaning of that is, please engage me in your pure devotional service. That's what we're begging Krishna when we chant his holy name during japa. Please engage me in your pure devotional service. We're not looking for, some great material facility by chanting japa. We're trying to develop our love for Krishna. And Krishna and his name are not different. Oh, I forgot to put this one in there. I think I did. Yeah, I did. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Vinatam Nama Namino. So Krishna, make it real easy for you. Krishna and his name are non-different. Just as Kala and Krishna are non-different, Krishna and his name are non-different. So when we chant, we give everything. We perform painstaking tapasya, as Lord Brahma did, for 1,000 celestial years. That's what Lord Brahma did. We don't have to do it for that long. We just have to do it in this lifetime. If we do that, and we really give everything we've got, we arrange our entire life to optimize the chanting of our japa every single morning. We don't eat a big feast at night. I know it kind of goes against modern Indian culture, but better not to, because then you'll have you'll doze during your japa. And we don't talk. And Prabhupada made an interesting point. This is in regard to book distribution. All of the book distributors in North America assembled in Atlanta. This was in 1974 to get Prabhupada's darshan. And Suvas Prabhu, who's the longest tenured temple president in the ISKCON world. He's a temple president in LA. He's been temple president there since 1987. That's a long time. Being temple president is not an easy job. And he asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, how can we, all the book distributors are all together and they're waiting for that magic formula of how they could increase their book distribution. And so Savas asked Srila Prabhupada, how can we increase our desire to distribute your books? And Prabhupada responded, first he looked up at the ceiling and he just was silent for an extended period of time. And then he said, if you really want to increase book distribution, then you will chant all of your rounds without stopping. A key formula of optimizing your japa. So when I joined the movement, everybody got up, all the Sankirtan devotees got up at 2. So you get everything done, you know, before the Darshan Arti, get an hour reading in, and then they blasted off in the Sankirtan rocket ship, you know, and distribute a lot of books. So, but for anything, any service, but what to speak of our primary service of pleasing Krishna, because we can think, I want to please Krishna with my japa, okay? So then another point of fully in cooperation with the wishes of the Lord, we're regularly reading Bhagavatam. Idam Bhagavatam nama puranam brahmasamitam uttama shloka charitam chakara bhagavan rishi nishreya shaya lokaḥ danyam swastyayanam mahat. So Srimad Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of God, and is compiled by Vyasadeva, the incarnation of God. So it's meant for the ultimate good of all people. It's all blissful and it's all successful. All right, so we're associating with Krishna when we're reading Bhagavatam, and it goes deep into the heart. Oh, there's some really nice verses I'd like to quote in that, but a little limited here for time, because I think there's probably going to be some questions. Ekra Chakra is definitely going to have about 5 questions for me, guaranteed. No? Okay. So, one thing, if we perform, you know, like in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's Panchanga Bhakti is expanded. These are the 5 most potent forms of bhakti. Hearing Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, serving the devotees, worshipping the deity, and living in the Dham. Okay, so these accelerate our spiritual advancement. Now, living in the Dham, for those of you who are out there in cyberspace, just going to the temple. Prabhupada said, we're creating dhams all over the world. Okay, so when we do these, when we really take our devotional service seriously, order the Guru, hearing Bhagavatam, chanting japa, worshipping the deities, serving the devotees, living in the, you know, understanding this is the Dham, it's a sacred place. Then Tesham sarata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhiyogam tam ghanamam upayanti te. Krishna gives us the intelligence by which we can come to him. 10:10 Gita. So that we can, you know, develop our love for him. He lets us know. Okay, so then we're guided by the bona fide brahmanas. This is guiding principle 2. We're guided by the bona fide brahmanas and Vaiṣṇavas. Guyam akyati prichati. I wouldn't be sitting here today if I hadn't engaged in Guyam akyati prichati. It's not just the one time when I had my first Maha big test in Mayapur, but it's been multiple times. Whenever you know, I'm over my head with the current tribulation that Kala, or Krishna, by his inexplicable plan, has arranged for me, I immediately consult with a senior trusted Vaiṣṇava, and that's how I get back on track. You know, I understand, oh, Krishna, that's right, Krishna arranged this for my purification. Actually, I should be thankful, like Queen Kunti was. Okay, so then strictly following religious principles. There's an interesting conversation that took place. I couldn't find the date right off the top, but this was in a discussion that took, I think it was in 1974 or 75. It was a Rath Yatra in Philadelphia. And there's a professor who became a great friend and ally to our movement, Dr. Thomas Hopkins. He was a professor of religious studies at Franklin and Marshall College. This is down in, I think that's in southern Pennsylvania. No, maybe it's in Virginia. Anyway, That's a detail not important. So Dr. Hopkins asked Prabhupada, of all the things that you have written, which is the most important? Prabhupada response, the most important thing is how to love God. Okay? And then, but which book? This is Dr. Hopkins. The Vedanta philosophy. First the Bhagavad Gita, then the Srimad Bhagavatam. But is there one of the translations or purports which you want everyone to read? Yes. The Bhagavatam says that the ultimate goal in life is how to become liberated, not how to develop economically. And then he quotes a very significant verse. This is 1.2.9. Dharmasya yapavargasya narto tayopakopate nartasya dharmakantasya kama labayo kamo labaya hishmita. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Does it sound familiar to the definition of Uttama Bhakti? Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So, I was thinking of giving Ekachakra a 5 crore donation. So if I were to do that, Ekachakra, you'd have to be very careful not to use it for sense gratification, okay? Poor Ekachakra. Anyway, Bhishma Dev is there laying on a bed. He's got arrows stuck throughout his body. Just imagine. And he actually, because of his austerity, his vow not to marry, his father, Shantanu, granted him the capacity to choose his time of death. Now, normally someone that's got arrows all through his body wouldn't be alive. So there's, the inexplicable plan of the Lord is in place here. One last verse, and then we'll try and wrap things up here. There's this is again, we're dealing with following religious principles. Again, that's a little different. Usually we're thinking, Vanashram. This is Vanashram, okay, but it's Daivi Vanashram. Ata Pumbir Dvijashreshta. This is 1.2.13. Vanashrama vibhagashaha svanushthatasya dharmasya samsidhir haritoshanam. O best among the twice born, is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation according to caste divisions and orders of life is to please the personality of Godhead. Okay, so those are the 3 guiding principles. We've got working in such a way that we're cooperating, with the wishes of the Lord. Okay? And the other 2 support that one. Okay? We're guided by bona fide brāhmanas and Vaiṣṇavas, and we strictly follow religious principles. Okay? So are we there? Okay, one last quote, okay, before hopefully it's not before I leave my body, but this one is on page 91. It depends upon which version of which print run we're talking about with Nectar Devotion. But this is in chapter 5 under the, no, I'm sorry. It's chapter 10. Chapter 10. And this is under the subheading, Expecting the Lord's Mercy. It's on page 91 of the old Nectar Devotions. And Prabhupada paraphrases a very significant verse from the prayers of Lord Brahma. 10.14.8. Does everybody know it? Raise your hand if you know it. 10.14.8. If you don't know it, learn it, and learn it today, okay? Prabhupada says this should be the guide for all devotees in this nectar devotion. So 10.14.8. Tatenu kampam shukshamikshamano bunjani vatma kritam vipakam ridvag vapabir vididan namaste jiveta yo muktipade sadayabak. Now there's different translations. The one that I have learned comes from Prabhupada's translation. The one that's Prabhupada stopped translating in the 13th chapter of the 10th canto, so this was done by his disciples. But one who always seeks your compassion, this is the one I know, and thus tolerates all kinds of adverse conditions, understanding they're coming about as a result of one's past misdeeds, goes on rendering service with body, mind, and words, and rendering service from the core of his heart, he becomes eligible to enter into pure devotional service. Okay, so that's a whole 7 classes in itself. But learn the verse, for your own well-being. Okay, questions, comments? Ekachakra ki jai. Okay, he needs a microphone.
Hare Krishna, Janmastami.
Nice and loud for deaf old men.
Thank you for class. Can I ask in Russian? Mataji will translate.
Oh, you're gonna ask it in Russian, and she's gonna translate it into English. Okay. Then you need to take the mic over to her, right? Oh, you have a mic. Oh, okay, good. Okay, just don't yell at me, okay?
It's not yelling, that's my mouth.
Арджуна выслушал Бхагавад-гиту перед Курукшетрой и понял все наставления. И в этой битве не видел никаких проблем. А Yudhiṣṭhira сражался рядом с Арджуной и потом скорбел о всех убитых. Почему Арджуна не объяснил ему, что нет никаких проблем? Да, почему Арджуна по-дружески скажу? Нет никаких проблем.
Super loud. Louder than normal. Yeah.
In the battle of Kurukshetra, he understood that, right?
Right.
So, why did Arjuna, being a friend of Yudhiṣṭhira, could not explain to him, listen, there is nothing to, be sorry about.
Very simple. I got the question. And, why Arjuna couldn't explain, Krishna couldn't explain, Vyasadeva couldn't explain. Nobody could explain it to him. Why? The inexplicable plan of the Lord. Because this is a key point that. Whoops! Oh my God! I lost my. No internet here. I lost my page. Okay, so I got to come from my little brain. Okay, so this was the plan of the Lord. Okay, one is that Bhishma-dev felt very, very, he raised the Pandavas when they were under the excruciatingly cruel upbringing of Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. He was their grandfather. He was their shelter. Okay, so Krishna wanted them to come there in royal procession to show that they were established, so that Bhishma-dev could leave his body in peace of mind. Okay? Another reason. So that Krishna could personally be present, because he came with Yudhiṣṭhira. He was on his way to Dwarka, so he could be personally present when Bhishma-dev left his body. Okay? So, let's see, other reasons. To prove the superiority of the devotee. Srila Vyasadeva couldn't convince Yudhiṣṭhira. Krishna couldn't convince Yudhiṣṭhira. Both, they're Vishnu Tattva. So, but Bhishma-dev could, to glorify the great devotee, Bhishma-dev. So that there was tremendous affection between the Pandavas and Bhishma-dev. So there was this loving exchange that took place between the two. Tears were rolling down the Pandavas' cheeks. They were rolling down Bhishma's cheeks. And also, to demonstrate, you know, because so many famous personalities, Krishna, Pandavas, they were all assembled there. So then all these other sages and so many great personalities assembled for the departure of Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev was completely clear-headed. This was to demonstrate that no matter how difficult the circumstances are, a Vaiṣṇava can speak on Siddhanta. And this Prabhupada also demonstrated the same thing right at the end. Amazing purports at the end in the 13th chapter of the 10th canto. Okay, Padmapad Prabhu, he gave me a warning. You know, last night he said, Janmastami, you got to end on time. So it's 9:01. That's it, folks. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.